revalued land on the 1st of the 1st. So because we revalued land on the 1st of the 1st, we're going to, and always when we revalue, we do two things. So our land and buildings, we need to increase the value of land and buildings from what it is now, and we need to cancel the accumulated depreciation. So we're going to, we start off with, I'm just looking at the question, it says land and buildings cost $850, and accumulated depreciation land and buildings is 55. So we're going to increase our land and buildings up to up to 975. So that means I need to add on 175 onto my land and buildings. Is that right? No, 125. And that brings the figure up to, just double check, to 975. That's correct. So I'm going to cancel my accumulated depreciation up to this date. So that means there's 55 in my accumulated depreciation. Cancel all that. And those two figures, the 125 and the 55 together, go into my revaluation reserve. So I'll have 125 and 55. I'll have 180 grand in my revaluation reserve. The second thing that I need to do is at the end of the year, I'll need to do, now that I've got a new figure for my land and buildings, I'll have to do my accumulated depreciation or my depreciation expense. Now, I'm doing my depreciation expense second because I'm revaluing at the beginning of the year. If I was revaluing at the end of the year, then I do my depreciation expense first and then I'll do my revaluation. Okay? So, depreciation expense. The land element of the new value of 150. So the depreciation expense is going to be 975 minus 150. So that's 825 multiplied by whatever the depreciation is. Buildings depreciate 2% of cost. So it's 2 times 2%. So 16,500. Now that 16,500 has to be added to my accumulated depreciation. So the new accumulated, depreciation figure is going to be that, 16.5. So when I go to my balance sheet, this is the number I'm going to put in over here. So I'll have land and buildings. So 975 is our new figure, and then 16,500 was the depreciation that I worked out. So the net book value is those two, and that 16,500 is going to be in administration. Oh, sorry, it's just building depreciation. So I'm just going to do what I did before. So this is the figure that goes in. We'll have our accumulated depreciation figure. That's not working. And then we'll have our depreciation expense figure. And finally we'll have our evaluation reserve. So these are the numbers that need to go in. So revaluation reserve is going to be 180. Note number 7, note number 8. So note number 8, we need to do a bank reconciliation. So bank reconciliation is an entire topic for the ordinary level. For higher level, this is the only place that appears as in question 1. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at my bank account, and I'm going to compare that to the bank's version of my account, which we're going to call it, which is the bank statement. And the two of them should agree, but they don't agree. And we're going to fix both of them, and we'll end up with the same number. And that will give us a figure for bank, but along the way we'll have to change certain other accounts that we've dealt with. So the bank overdraft, so the bank says their balance is how much? Bank statement showed an overdraft of 62,280. 62,280. So my version, so I look at the balance for mine and bank in the credit column. So I'm just going to have it as a minus, so it's minus 60 grand. So I'm overdrawn 60 grand. So each time I look at some of these entries, I ask myself, is it me that's wrong? Did I forget to record something? Or is the bank wrong? Did the bank not know about something that I already have recorded? Okay, so the first one. A check received from a debtor 5-6 have been dishonoured by the bank. And then the debtor was declared bankrupt and made a credit transfer to the first one. Okay, now, first, who knew about this? Did I know about it? So therefore I'm right, or did the bank know about it? The bank knew about it, so therefore I didn't. So I'm going to take away the check that's bounced. So debtor, and that means I'm going to need to, down here, I'm going to need to fix my debtor's account. And also, the debtor's gone bankrupt, so therefore there's going to be a bad debt. So I'll take away the amount of the check. So the check is minus, where is it now? 5-6. And then it says, but we did receive money. Check credit transfer. So then there was a credit transfer. So I'm going to add that on. And the credit transfer is, now it's 30 cents for every euro that he owed. So it's going to be that number times 30 cents. So 1680 is what I got from him. So my debtors, I'm going to need to cancel the full amount of my debtors, full amount of the debt. The bad debt is going to be how much I've lost out on, okay? Which is, so bad debt's an expense, so therefore it's going to be 1680 minus the 5600. So 3290 is my bad debt. And that's going to be a new expense, okay? And the other figure then would normally be bank, but I'm doing the bank figure here, there now. So I'll do my debtors while I'm at it. I don't think in the question I've dealt with debtors so far. So debtors is 98.2. Just quickly checking. In my notes, I don't see debtors been mentioned here. Actually, it is. Debtors is mentioned, note number 4. Actually, I'm just going to mark those while I'm at it. So I would have dealt with that. Sales and closing stock. Okay, so debtors is 9,700. Take that away, so you'll get, so there's my new debtors figure. Bad debts, just reading the question. There's a bad debt provision, but there's no mention of bad debts, so that's a new expense. So I'll put that in here. And bad debts is to do with me distributing goods, so there's a distribution expense. And so that number there. Okay, I'll put my debtors figure in while I'm at it. So debtors is going to change. Okay, so that's that one. Next one. A direct debit to a local refuse company, 860, had not been recorded in the company's books. Who was wrong, me or the bank? Who didn't know about it? Who didn't record it? Me. Okay? So because I didn't do it, my bank version is wrong. The bank's version is correct. Okay? So I'm going to take away my direct debit. And the direct debit is 860. And it's a minus. Okay, so then I read the question. It's for refuse. So I need to look at the expenses from the question. Which one is most likely refuse? I don't see cleaning, discounts, no. So the only one I can think of is salaries and general expenses. So refuse, I'm going to assume, is going to be mixed in there. So salaries and general expenses. So the figure at the moment, I know I dealt with salaries and general expenses because of my suspense. So salaries and general expenses, I had 245,760. So I need to change that. So 245,760. That was the figure I had after my suspense. I'm going to add another expense for this refuse. So now the new figure for salaries and general expenses is those two added together. So that's N55. I'm just going to put that over here. Okay. And then move on to the last one. A check for fees for 2.5 paid to a debtor had not been presented for payment. Who didn't know about it, me or the bank? The bank. Okay? So therefore, my bank account is right. My director's fees expense is right because I've recorded it. So the bank doesn't know about it. So we're just going to take away the director's fees. So that's minus 2,500. So the real figure for my bank statement should be 64,780. So I'll go over to this. So 64,780. So the two of them now agree. So that's the figure that I'm going to put in for bank. So that is M51. Okay. So now, note number, that's not 7, we're on to note, no, that's not 7, that's note 8. That's not 7, this is note 8. We're on to note 9. Now these, it says provision made for. So that means that there's bills that we have to include that we haven't actually paid yet. So because we haven't paid them, they're going to be current liabilities or maybe current assets. Okay. So the first one, provision should be made for investment income due and debenture interest due. We did these already. When we were up here working out my suspense, I worked out my debenture interest due, and I put that figure in as a current liability, and my interest due, I did that in the previous one, I put it in as a current asset. So that first one I've dealt with. The second one, provision for bad debts should be adjusted to 4% debtors. So just as a reminder, so we'll have our current debtors figures, then we'll take away our provision, and that will give us the correct figure that will go into current assets. Now, we start off with an opening provision. We're going to have an adjustment. If I decide to increase my bad debt provision, then I would treat that as an expense. If I decide my bad debt provision is too high and I want to make it lower, I'll do the opposite of the expense, which is an income. So I'll put it into add gains. So I'm just going to put expense or income. And I'll then have my closing figure. Now, so my closing figure. So it's the closing figure is going to be my whatever figure I have up here that I've already worked out already for my debtors. So there's my debtors that I have at the moment, and I'm going to multiply that number by 4%. So 3,404. I go to my trial balance. and there's a figure for bad debt provision of £4,000. So that means that I'm reducing my bad debt provision, so that means I have an income, not an expense. So the difference then is going to be, so because I've got an income, 596, I'm going to put that into add gains. And that's in here, so I'm going to squeeze this in. No, 596. Okay. So that's that one, and then the final figure then, so my debtors figure is going to be the 81, whatever I have, minus the 3404, and that gives us the current asset figure. So the 3404 is the figure I have to put into my current assets. Next one. Managing Director should be paid a bonus commission of 5% of all sales in excess of. So I haven't paid him yet, so therefore, so it's going to be a current liability. Now I'm not going to write a note in this because this should be quite straightforward, so but I'm still going to have to make sure I record it. Now, so I'll go up to sales. Sorry, this is going to be an expense in distribution. So the figure then is going to go in, is going to be whatever the sales figure, so there's the sales figure, minus 1.2 million. And whatever that number is, I'm going to multiply that by 5%. So that's my commission, and that is a current liability. The last one, a transfer from of 10 grand should be made from profit to capital reserve. So if we just look in here, in terms of reserves, what could happen in any normal question? So reserves are profits that are saved. Some are saved for a specific purpose, like you might have a redemption reserve.
Sean, can I get here?
He is, yeah. Okay. So you might have maybe a reserve where he's putting money aside, profit aside to pay off a loan, something like that. You could say a general reserve is like a rainy day fund. He's putting money aside for just any reason, just in case something unexpected happens. So at the moment, so from our trial balance, it says that the general reserve, capital reserve, they call it 45. Now they've called it capital reserve in the question, so I'm going to call it capital reserve. And at the moment it's 45 grand. But we're told here that we're going to transfer 10 grand into it, so I'm going to add 10 grand to that. And that 10 grand goes over here. So if you look at what we have here, so we'll have our dividends. I'm not sure if dividends was an issue in this one. But we're going to take, from the net profit before tax, other than dividends, we're going to take the transfer from here, because it's some of our retained profits that have been transferred out. So I'll put that with the dividends, okay, as another minus against my net profit. Are you okay that so far? Now that's the last of it. So that's the last of our notes. What you would do now is go and look at all of the numbers that we haven't touched and put all of those numbers into the correct place. So I'm just going to go back up to the start of the question. So it says land and buildings at cost. Yes, we dealt with land and buildings. Accumulated depreciation, we dealt with that. Delivery vans cost, yeah, we dealt with that. Discount net, we've put that in. Profit and loss balance, I haven't. So profit and loss balance is 71.5. So there's opening profit and loss reserve 71,500. So any number that I haven't dealt with, sorry, 71.5. That's correct, yeah. So any number that I haven't used from my trial balance, I put those in now. Is that okay? So I'm just going to finish my recording.